Welcome to the world famous Bitcoin Original Gangster, the show that takes no shit when it comes to SegWit. On this show, we'll be defending Bitcoin gangster style and exposing the shit in shitcoins. The idea of this show is that you ask us your questions on crypto and we'll tell you all that we know. Let's get the disclaimers out of the way. All the opinions that you hear on this show are opinion and must only ever be taken as opinion. They are never to be taken as any form of advice, family, financial, sexual or otherwise. And on that note, let's rock and roll.
Hey.
Hey, Rachel. How are we?
Here, wait. Did you want to do it audio?
My show's set up so it's all about the guests. So you look fantastic right now on my screen.
I'm gonna go to audio if it's gonna be an audio cast. That's okay with me.
I know it's a visual one, but you can use any picture that you like.
Oh, I can't see you.
Yeah, I have my screen set up for my guests, so it's kind of like there's a full picture of you in the middle of it.
So I don't understand.
Well, the show's all about the guests, so kind of like it's kind of like set up for the guests' visual. So it's kind of like there's a big picture of you in the middle of the screen.
Okay, so it is like a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the intention of it.
Yeah. Bring yourself back on.
Okay, that's fine. So
there we go.
This.
How's your voice today? Was it a little bit? You had a sore throat yesterday.
It is better.
Good. Well, we may as well crack on then. Thank you very much for joining us on this Bitcoin Original Gangster YouTube channel. So the reason we've set up this channel is because basically we kind of like want to get to the bottom of what Bitcoin is, and then we'll defend it from all these shitcoins. That's the idea. So you got into Bitcoin quite early, didn't you? Was it 2013 or something like that, I read?
No. No, I've been in the space for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
2 years maybe. CryptoFinally has existed since November of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me think. So when did you buy your first Bitcoin?
When did I? Well, I started accumulating 2 years ago when I first got involved in the space. I don't think that I've ever made a purchase for like one Bitcoin. I don't think that I've ever sat down and done that specifically. It's been accrual. I get paid in cryptocurrency. I stack sats as many ways as possible, Bitcoin back, and I make purchases. But I don't think I ever sat down and said, I'm going to buy a full Bitcoin. Today, I'm more about low risk and dollar cost averaging.
That sounds very sensible. And for viewers listening who have not heard of dollar cost averaging, can you just explain your investment tactics there?
Putting small amounts in over a period of time instead of putting all of your money in at one point in time, as to catch different points of the market. So if you put, say if I bought one Bitcoin and it was all at 5,000 and then it dropped to 25, I would have put all my money in at 5,000, but with dollar cost averaging, I would have put a portion in at 5,000, a portion in at 4.5, a portion in at 25, and overall would have gotten more back.
Excellent. And what was it that first attracted you to crypto? Because you've got quite a big following now, haven't you? 27,000 followers on Twitter.
I think it's almost 29.
29,000. Wow. What you need is $1 off each of your followers.
I know. I don't know how to make that happen, but I would appreciate if everyone wanted to give me $1 monthly. That would, yes, I would be done. I would be set. I would be ready. If the gratitude was in their hearts. But no, I got started because of the community. So that's really what I do in the space now. My focus is really community building, inclusivity, expanding the space to more people, getting them involved. And I was exposed to the community for the first time, Consensus 2018 at the networking events, and basically just decided it would be a dumb idea not to get involved in cryptocurrency. So I jumped in sort of full throttle into crypto. At that time, I worked for a different YouTube channel. We made educational blockchain content. And then around November 2018, like I said, I started as CryptoFinally, and just got my foot in the door with the channel that I have now.
Yeah, you've done exceptionally well. So did you have a few thousand followers before you jumped into crypto, or have you got 27,000 crypto followers?
So all my followers are from my time in crypto as CryptoFinally across platforms. I think I have about 45,000. And I started with 0. Yeah. So I snagged my handles in September 2018, and you can see that date on my Twitter, but I didn't start doing anything on any of my channels until November 2018. So this is a straight crypto audience that I've built.
And I've seen you giving a presentation on Bitcoin on stage. You know, you looked very confident. When did you first realize that you sort of had the confidence to speak on Bitcoin? Did you actually understand it, or are you kind of like coming at it from a unique angle where maybe you don't need to understand the technicals of it or something like that?
So yes, I do understand Bitcoin, but I also understand that there are people more fit to explain the technological aspects of Bitcoin and blockchain than myself. That's not really where I'm geared towards. So what you saw probably was my talk that I gave at the Cryptocurrent conference in New Orleans. And that talk was about Bitcoin in the media, cryptocurrency as portrayed by the media and perceived by mainstream audiences, and how that sort of affects us and our community as a whole. That is something that I talk about often. And that is definitely a different perspective and a new take. I hadn't seen a lot about it prior to me beginning to sort of open those doors for myself. I did a lot of research. I was on a lot of HTML-based pages trying to find these resources for where Bitcoin has been mentioned in the past. So I really take that historical look at what's happened in the media over time and sort of the way that we portray ourselves and how can our community access that sort of information to grow, as opposed to doing things like giving trading advice or explaining to you the blockchain.
Right, yeah, got you. So, what would you say to somebody that just kind of like said, "Oh, you know, Rachel, really, really love your talk on Bitcoin. What is it?"
What is it? I would explain that Bitcoin was a decentralized currency, and I would explain its value to them. So I think that a lot of people looking into the space are often misled by needing to understand this really technologically advanced information about Bitcoin and blockchain. So I think that the best answer that you can give a newcomer who doesn't understand it all, as opposed to sort of breaking it down, is you can explain the value that it brings to them. So this is why Bitcoin is important to you. Is it the peer-to-peer transactions? Is it the lack of fees? Is it your ability to hold on to your own money? Is it decentralized finance? What is it about Bitcoin and blockchain that benefits that person? And I think that that's actually a really smart tactic moving forward for people to get them involved and not have them feel immediately overwhelmed by the concept of Bitcoin.
And if somebody wanted to maybe sort of go away and research it themselves, having listened to you, and then sort of try to join the dots in their own time, is there any sort of source of information that you tell them to maybe go away and have a look at or read through?
I would tell them, well, I mean, it depends. If you're looking at books, I love Andreas Antonopoulos and the books that he's written about Bitcoin blockchain. But if you're looking at web resources, there's so much stuff out there. The only real suggestion that I would give you when it comes to web resources, when it comes to looking at YouTubers, reading articles, learning about Bitcoin and blockchain, is look for people who are being diplomatic and putting facts over opinions. Because when you start taking in too many opinions, you're not really doing your own research. You're taking a guided opinion that someone has put out. It's not fact-based. So make sure that when you're doing research to be fact-based, not opinion-based.
Yeah, that's interesting. You should say that. You know, Andres Antonopoulos was recently quoted as saying that he wrote his book based on what he was told about Bitcoin. So he didn't actually do much research himself. That kind of like I thought that was a little bit odd.
I also think, well, I mean, I could believe that in a new space, but I'm sure he did do research. I'm sure there's like a lot of things to that, what you just said. I'm not going to take it away exactly as is framed like that. But I do believe that there is a philosophical approach, and that's the one that I take on Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space as well. So that is strong for me. You're asking me how would I have people go look up the technological aspects? I would tell them in the technological aspects and learning about what it truly is, and what it offers, to look at fact-based stuff. But we all know that sentiment does matter, but it's a completely different domain. So I would say those are two different sorts of learning.
Yeah. So how do you define Bitcoin yourself, like personally?
How do I define Bitcoin?
Yeah. Like, if somebody said to you, right, Rachel, what is it? I've got to shoot. Break it down for me. Would you give them like a one-line definition of what it was?
I would say it was opening a door for decentralized finance. I would explain, again, the peer-to-peer aspect, the fact that it's feeless, the fact that you don't need to go through a government entity in order to make a transaction, in order to send money to a loved one. I would explain the ways that you could earn and hold cryptocurrency, how it knocks out the banker and that middleman, how you can become an investor yourself without needing to have $100,000 in the bank already. Those sorts of things. Again, I don't really sit here and break down technological aspects. If I were to explain what Bitcoin is to me, that is what Bitcoin is to me.
Yeah. I had somebody approach me the other day, and they were saying, look, I bought some cryptocurrency, some BTC, and I sent it to somebody, and he said it took over 2 days for them to 2 days for it to arrive. I didn't quite know what to say to him, apart from maybe things are improving kind of slowly. I thought that was a bit. Well, I kind of wasn't really. I was a bit flummoxed when he said that to me, to be honest.
Yeah. Are you asking for my take?
Well, what should I have said?
Oh, that sometimes things don't work as you would expect them to work in a fully developed market. There are obviously kinks that we're working on here and there. Things slow down. It happens. There are other currencies that offer faster transaction times, on a more regular basis than Bitcoin itself, if that's what you're looking for, is speed specifically. But yeah, things happen. This again isn't fully fleshed out. We're 11 years old. There's a lot of work that needs to be done as far as user interface. And that's something that I talk about too. It's not necessarily all in the tech, it's in the interface. It's in what we experience when we're interacting with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So explain those sort of things. I think just flat out, I think it's expected that there might be issues in something that's in the early stages that we are right now, that over time are being solved with different solutions. And Bitcoin, as more people get involved, things will change.
So do you recommend sort of other currencies for people to use in the meantime if they're sort of trying to send value to friends and family abroad or in other places?
No, not really. I mean, if you want to use a faster, something that works very quickly, you can use something like Digibyte. I did love the Digibyte community. And honestly, I say that because I love the Digibyte community so much. I know that it has very fast transaction speeds, but they're also really good people. So it goes to show to be good people surrounding your community and your coins. But no, overall, I wouldn't have told them to switch. I'm saying if you're asking me a very specified question, which is how could I have done it faster, there are ways to do it faster. I would have told them to wait for the Bitcoin. That would have been my solution.
Yeah. So do you think that like cryptocurrencies are like a digital asset for holding, or do you think they should be more of like a cash sort of system?
I think they can be whatever you want them to be. And that's what's pretty cool about it. You can use it for investments. You can use it for day-to-day purchases. It's got a ridiculous amount of use cases at this point. And I would just say it is what you want it to be. I personally don't trade. I'm pretty low risk, dollar cost averaging long-term investments.
And so do you think that sort of like, BTC and Digibyte, as you mentioned there, do you view them as competing currencies, or do you view them as complementary to each other?
No, they're different things. So I don't view many of there are obviously products and projects that compete with one another, but I don't think that anything's really competing with Bitcoin, in my opinion.
So how was sort of Bitcoin differentiating from Digibyte that you mentioned there? Because obviously when you said Digibyte has got really fast transactions,
Well, you
that
asked
would
me
really.
very specifically what you would do to get a faster transaction in the case of Bitcoin sometimes being slower. So that was my answer with Digibyte. It wasn't necessarily me endorsing. I don't hold a ton of Digibyte. So it's not necessarily like something that I'm highly invested in. So I wouldn't start there. I would say that Bitcoin is the original protocol, and that's what makes Bitcoin different.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's that kind of makes sense. So there's a few arguments at the moment about this original protocol, which we're trying to get to the bottom of. So I had a friend of mine who works for a merchant bank recently, and he said that he was really interested, or his organization was really interested in blockchain technology, and they had initially looked into the workings of Bitcoin, and they said, yeah, this seems to work. This seems to work really well. But he said it was only later on when they realized that, sort of Bitcoin was designed to be sort of like a chain of signatures so that all the transactions could validate one another. And he said that when SegWit was added, SegWit was segregating the witnesses in it, which means that transactions couldn't validate one another, which effectively meant the entity or whoever it was that actually added that segregated witness now basically had complete control of the system. And he said that his organization could just never use it. And he says, look, I've read the white paper, it's not in there. What's going on? And I didn't really know what to say. What would you have said to that? Is that a bit too technical, or?
Well, no, off of that, I feel like you're asking me really weird questions for me. Just gonna throw that out there. Not entirely sure why you keep leading with technically driven questions. I think you're pretty familiar with what I do. But secondary, I would say that it doesn't matter if there's a better protocol. It doesn't matter if we make investments. It doesn't make it not the original protocol. And a great example for that would be something like email. We use the original email protocol. Have there been better protocols built on top of it? Have there been better programs than original email services? Yes, there are things, there are features that have been added to some email servers where we can now see confirmation when someone has read our email. Much easier for us to communicate back and forth. Additions like that would make email better for us. However, email and what we use right now was the original protocol. And we use it because it was the original protocol. It's not to say that there haven't been add-ons, that there haven't been things that could create it and make it better, add to its functionality and user profile, but we use the original protocol. And I'd say that that's true of Bitcoin as well.
So I know that so they're in order to sort of speed up the transaction, so whether we could use Bitcoin rather than Digibyte, they were saying that they're developing this Lightning network on Bitcoin. So is that something that you've looked into?
I mean, I've used Lightning in brief, but again, I'm just not I'm not a technically driven person. That's not really my takeaway from the space. I look more at sentiment. So you've asked me like maybe 10 questions about technical aspects of Bitcoin in the last like however long we've been on this. And I'm answering all of them to the best of my ability and from where I come from in the space. But I just think that I might not be the best person to ask some of these questions that you're asking right now. And I'm starting to feel like it's leading.
Oh, got you. Yeah, no, that's all right. It was just these questions keep coming up. And it's kind of like I'm trying to find who's got the answers because I don't. So it's kind of like,
I understand that, and it's fair to say I've just never represented myself as someone who is breaking down the technical aspects of Bitcoin. I've very clearly stated several times that what I do is very community based. It's about the social spaces. It's about how we perceive Bitcoin, how we look at Bitcoin, and that goes further than breaking it down sort of in these ways. And when people ask me questions like this, I typically refer them to people who can give better answers than I can. So I just don't want people to think that I'm not being transparent. I understand where my skill set is. I understand that it has to do with integration of communities, with expansion of the space, with inclusivity, and finding a way to get more exposure and people involved as a whole. But for the most part, you know, my interface with Bitcoin, again, is I am a long-term investor. I dollar cost average in. I love social media dApps that are built in decentralized and blockchain-based spaces. There are some products that I use that I love to earn Bitcoin with, but you could consider me an average Joe.
Gotcha. So how do you see these? How do you explain this? Yeah, the chain splits to anybody that asks, or do you just like refer them to somebody else?
I feel like, did you just completely disregard everything I just said?
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, that's kind of like what I'm assuming that you do. You're just kind of like confirming that because obviously that's the main question that a lot of people have these days. You know, and they're like, well, why is this happened? And you know, I can. As a you know, from a newbie's point of view, it's extremely confusing. And I would have thought that it would have been better if there was like just one, you know, because then it just saves a whole load of confusion.
I'm of the opinion that newcomers to the space and people who are just in the beginning phases of understanding cryptocurrency, they don't care. They're not gonna want to know about forks. They're not gonna want to know about what it means for the chain to split. It doesn't make sense to them. One thing is one thing. And that's just how they're going to consider it. It's going to be built into the perception and the sentiment. So I wouldn't even really take the time out to try and explain that to somebody who's brand new. And yes, that's going to have a lot of tech heads pretty upset, but it's not all about the tech heads. And new people in the space, I've never experienced a new person in the space ask me about a chain split. That would indicate to me they are not new.
Well, but I mean, if you looked on CoinCap, I mean, like, yeah, there's thousands of coins on there. If somebody said to you, you know, like, which one is what and what differentiates them all, you know, are they all the same? Do they do different things? I mean, like, apart from sort of the actual, you know, I suppose you can call it relatively sort of tangible difference in the speed of the transactions, you know, people wouldn't really understand, you know, what they're looking at. Because they're not shares in companies or anything like that.
I don't really recommend people go out and buy a bunch of altcoins. So if they ask me that question, I would give them the straightforward answer that I'm looking at long-term investments, high market cap coins, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, coins that you can find purchasable and exchangeable on many different places, a high liquidity. So I would give them that sort of answer. That, again, would be less about the functionality of the coin itself, but from the long-term investment perspective, which is where I really come from. I'm not really a huge advocate for trading. There are people who are very, very good at it, but it is hard. So I'm not necessarily giving advice that gears towards that.
So was it generally sort of like the community that got you excited about Bitcoin, or was there sort of like something in it where you thought, oh wow, this kind of like solves a problem. This could actually be, you know, this could benefit the world, you know, with this new technology that nobody's ever heard of called blockchain.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, I think that Bitcoin and blockchain are going to be huge. I think that they solve a ridiculous amount of problems, a ridiculous amount coming from all different angles, going from literally healthcare to social media and the way that we interact with it, everything. Supply chain is awesome. Supply chain is my favorite use case for blockchain, in addition to social media content ownership. I think that's amazing and it's got a lot more to be explored. But overall, that's really my take, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So it's
So I do this. I believe in it. I think that there's a lot of room for growth. I think, again, like what I said, sending money to family members worldwide. Say I moved to New York City from another country and I need to send the money back to my grandma, and my grandma needs to go pick it up, but she doesn't have her ID, so she can't go get it from the bank. This makes it easy for me to send it to her. There are so many ways that this can help people, to cut out the middleman, to cut out the centralized banks, and to allow us to have decentralized finance. There are so many many ways that this can benefit people. So I do believe in it, but the community also is amazing. And I think the community deserves more. And so that's really where I am, is helping the community expand, helping the community see that there is room to get more circles of thought, more representation, more diversity into cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Yeah. And if a newbie was to come up to you and say, "Oh, look, what's the difference between a Bitcoin and blockchain?" How would you describe that to them?
Bitcoin is the currency.
Yep.
And blockchain is a technology. I mean, I could explain the decentralized ledger and the blocks and all of the things that have to do with the blockchain, but I'd say blockchain is the technology, right? So Bitcoin would be the currency and blockchain would be the technology, because for the most part, if I am explaining it to a newbie, again, I'm not necessarily explaining everything about blockchain. I'm explaining how blockchain can benefit them.
Yeah. And can one exist without the other?
Can one exist without the other? I think that they're pretty intrinsically related. But again, I just feel like you're being like really leading. I feel like every question that you have asked has not really focused on what I said before, but tried to sort of trick me into a technical trap that
Oh, really?
I've told you a couple times that I'm not looking to get trapped in. Like,
I know these are questions that like newbies who are sort of investigating Bitcoin
I
generally
have
tend to
never
ask.
had a newbie ask me any question about splitting chains. Like, these really aren't the questions that I think newbies are investigating, if I'm being honest. And I also think you who are familiar with me understand that.
Yeah. Well, do you get? I mean, is your show catered for sort of people who are relatively advanced in crypto,
No,
or do you sort of come at it from a
no.
business perspective?
No, my show caters to people who are new. It's an open style AMA where we talk to people. We catch up on the week. We talk about what's happened in the community, in the social spaces, and products that we like, products that we enjoy. Just basically the way that we get involved. I talk about social media and decentralized applications a lot on my shows. But for the most part, it's for newcomers. It's for people who are looking for ways to get involved in the space. It is not a technically driven show. It is not trading advice. It is not charting, but more covering the topics that I've mentioned over the course of our talk now.
Yeah, that's good. That. And do you? I mean, having a bit of a chit chat and a bit of a gossip with everybody in crypto, because crypto is amazing for gossip and all of that kind of stuff. Do you ever discuss personalities in the space, like Roger Ver, for example?
We don't like go out of our way to talk about people in the space unless there's something active going on. So if there's something active going on in the space, we'll definitely talk about what's going on that week and the reactions to it. But I've never taken the time out to specifically take down any one person. No.
Are you a fan of Roger Ver? 'Cause I mean, I have to say, I used to be. He seems to be promoting BCH with everything that he's got at the moment, although I think he's rather misguided. It fascinates me as to how somebody like him could have been such a huge promoter, of Bitcoin in the early days, and then sort of like find himself on the other side of the fence, as it were. Because I mean, he was known as Bitcoin Jesus, wasn't he? And even from my point of view, he was young, he was enthusiastic. He'd certainly been in Bitcoin for a long time, and now all of a sudden he's like saying, "Look, it's I'm supporting this over Bitcoin," which people generally do have questions about. I mean, I was quite shocked by that, to be honest with you. How did you feel about it, or did that happen before you sort of got into it?
I just really don't spend my personal time worrying about what Roger Ver is doing.
Oh,
Just
really?
like all of that sound, it's all what he did. Bitcoin Cash is here. He's praising it. He's big on it. But no, I don't really spend a lot of time worrying about, his timeline and his youth and his promotion and how he's operated in the space because it's just not relevant to moving forward, in my opinion. Like, we can talk about Bitcoin Cash, we can talk about Bitcoin, but I don't think that Roger Ver as a player really plays into anything that I need to be discussing or thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I mean, obviously, people who are into crypto, I mean, generally tend to get very passionate about it, and he seems very passionate about his cause, which it seems to have like his altered focus. It seems to be very much on the smoking crack in your own home these days, and like saying you can do this stuff outside of government. Do you think that there's a real sort of like extremist libertarian kind of section that cryptocurrency has brought out of society that we didn't really know about before?
I'm not sure how those things relate, Roger Ver's actions in the libertarian end of society, but I think that we're looking at the financial systems in a different way for the first time. We're the first wave of people to really take into consideration how we interact with the banking system, and how we interact with the US dollar. And I think that that's really important, and in a lot of ways is very libertarian. However, I don't know. I don't know how to answer it. I don't know how to answer that.
No, that's all right. I mean, it's always good getting people's opinions on it, and if they do have one, because it's certainly varied. So I always like to ask everybody to hear their take on it. Just sort of before I sort of like cast my own judgment. But do you see Bitcoin as a way to circumnavigate government, or do you see it as sort of like working with government? What's your view on this?
I mean, I think it just depends on how it wants to play. I think it's not supposed to be working within the government entities. I think that's the idea, is that it doesn't involve the government. But I know, governments out there doing a lot of regulation. I'm in New York. The most regulation, I believe, is here right now. There are very seldom things that I can actually use while I'm in New York, living in New York, when it comes to cryptocurrency. So it's just a matter of how they get involved. I know on the other end, a lot of them are involved. There's a lot of government ends that are involved in cryptocurrency. So it's just going to be the way that they move, I think. But I think it doesn't need them. I don't think that cryptocurrency needs the government at all, and we'd prefer that they not try to take it over.
Do you think there's a possibility they could? Do you think they could take over Bitcoin?
I think anything could happen in any way. I think that there's a possibility that literally anything could happen at all. I don't think it's likely. I don't think that they're going to take the time out to do it. I don't think that it's a big enough issue for them right now, but I think that anyone can do anything they want. I think they could try if they felt like it.
Yeah, and how do you think the government views it? Do you think the government is skeptical? Do you think they're sort of anti-Bitcoin? Do you think they'd be pro-Bitcoin? Because they seem to be on the side of blockchain technology, but when it comes to currency, that's when they sort of like seem to kind of be relatively unsure. Because I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about blockchain ever. I've only ever heard people say blockchain technology seems fascinating. We're looking at implementing it, or we're looking at it in some way, but suddenly when it comes to the topic of cryptocurrency, that's when they and ah.
Well, I think it's a threat to their financial system, and I believe that that's difficult for them. So it might actually result in them jumping on the bandwagon as a result of not wanting to have that sort of economic backlash that might happen if people take their money out of the US dollar and put it into Bitcoin. Yeah.
What's your take on this digi-dollar that the US government have been talking about since this COVID-19 has swept the world by storm?
I have not been keeping up on the digi-dollar.
It was just something that the US government had mentioned. It always makes me laugh when you heard JP Morgan. Initially, we had Jamie Dimon saying that Bitcoin was stupid and that nobody should use it and that it was a scam. And then the next minute they're bringing out JP Morgan coin. Mm-hmm. And then the Congress that hauled Mark Zuckerberg up in front of them and said, look, we feel as though your Libra coin might be a threat to our sovereignty and things like that. It's it's all getting a bit serious at the top. How do you sort of see this playing out in the end, do you think?
You mean Bitcoin?
Well, yeah. What's going to happen?
I don't think anybody knows. I don't think that anybody knows. I think that it could take a lot of different turns. I believe that overall, I think we all have some reason to believe that it will do well and continue to grow. But none of us can say for sure. I don't have a long-term projection because there are a lot of moving factors.
So would you still say, like, if somebody was looking at it as an investment, would you still say that it was extremely risky? Or would you say that it's sort of, quite a good investment?
I still think it's a good investment from a logarithmic angle. That being said, it's only 11 years old, which is a very short amount of time for any market. So looking in the long run, there are considerations to be taken.
Yeah. It's do you think that it could be money for the world eventually? Do you think that was the idea behind? Do you think that's the idea that Satoshi Nakamoto had in mind when he created it?
I don't think I have any place to say what Satoshi Nakamoto had in mind when he created it.
Oh no, it's just an opinion.
It would be great if it could advance to a global currency. I mean, it's already on its way, but the percentage of people who use it is very, very low. If we could bring that up, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, what's your take? Is it a store of value or medium of exchange? What's your view on that?
I feel like you asked me that already.
Yeah.
And I said that it really depends on where you're coming from and what you need it for. So what about Bitcoin benefits you? Is it better for you as a store of value, or is it better for you as a means of exchange? So you really need to look at how it approaches your life. That's what I would say. I would say that it serves a benefit in both regards.
Very diplomatic. Yeah. I like that one. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's just your perception on, what would you want to use it for? If you want to store your value in it, then they can. If they want to use it as a medium exchange, then they just can. So okay, I get that. So it's just what somebody might potentially. Let me think. So I suppose it would be. I suppose if they were looking at it in terms of an investment, they would probably be looking at it as a speculative investment because it's quite volatile, and I suppose it would be. I suppose with it being relatively new technology, it would be quite risky.
Could be.
Yeah. My mind is constantly churning whenever I'm having discussions on Bitcoin and blockchain, as you can probably tell, because there are so many other people that seem to have so many questions on it as well. But like, particularly newbies, at the moment. I mean, the cryptocurrency market has grown massively. So I get a lot of people wondering, or asking me or having discussions about. What's the? Let's have a quick look at the. Have a quick look at the overall market cap right now while we're on here. So this is. Here we go. So the market cap totaling. So the total market cap. Oh, I'm looking at it in GBP. Let's put USD on there. United States dollar. $174 billion. That's huge. And of that $174 billion, Bitcoin has got 116 of that. So that's that's well over. Well, that's well over 50% of the entire market. So with the market growing as much as it has, do you think there are scams in there? Do you think shit coins are really shit? Do you think people have purposely and nefariously designed these things to exit scam, as it were?
Do I believe that there are any tokens within the market cap of cryptocurrency that are scams?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that they exist. Yes.
Do you have your eye on any that we could warn people about?
Not really, no.
So have you come across them, or any where you thought to yourself, right, that doesn't make sense, that's not right? Or anybody that you've spoken to who have just basically sort of like given you a blank look as if to say, yeah, don't ask me that question?
No, I I don't feel like blatantly think it, I don't have any, there's no specific scams that are going on right now that I'm relative of. You asked me just now if I have any that I want to say. No, I don't really have any that I want to say. And I don't, yeah, I don't have any that I want to say. Like,
Yeah, no, that's all right because I mean, reading through the white papers of all these coins, or all the developers are extremely enthusiastic about their projects, but you'll have somebody else who will have a scathing opinion of what they're doing, and it also sort of like goes vice versa. So yeah, I guess it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the future. But what are your future plans? Are you planning on talking at any conferences soon?
well, I'm in New York, so COVID has shut down all the conferences.
Oh yeah, crikey.
I'm going to be doing, there's some conference, Remote CryptoCon, that I'm working with right now. That's going to be doing some online stuff. I believe it's in June. So I'm working on that, and then my live streams, just working with the community, putting out more YouTube videos. As long as coronavirus is going on, I'm pretty sure we'll be stuck at home for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, what's it like where you are?
I'm in New York. I've just been in my home.
Are you self isolating or are you just doing the
Everything is
recommend?
closed. New York is shut down. And if you're not an essential worker, you're not supposed to go outside right now until April 15th.
Wow, that long. That's gonna send a few people stir crazy. I'm hoping to keep myself preoccupied with doing cryptocurrency videos like this one. So thank you very much for coming on my show. You've you've stopped me from going stir crazy for 40 minutes so far. So much appreciated.
Thank
I know you said you wanted to sort of like wrap this up after 20 or 30 minutes. So I want to thank you very much for adding another 10 on there. It has been an absolute pleasure. How can people find you on how can people find your media channels?
At CryptoFinally on Twitter or YouTube would be the best places.
Excellent. I'm sure that our listeners and viewers will be very much looking forward to seeing you on there.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks very
I
much.
apologize if I'm contentious, but I just think that there are places for people to talk, and I know that mine isn't necessarily on the dense technological aspects of blockchain. That's just not really where I come from, and I don't want to lead people down a bad road.
No, yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, thanks for being sort of frank and honest about that. Is there could you sort of recommend anybody else that maybe we could have a chat with about the technical side of things?
Oh,
Who do you
man.
normally
I
go
can
to?
send you some information, but if you haven't talked to my live stream partner, Girl Gone Crypto, yet, she is absolutely
Oh,
fantastic. And so she dives deep into interviews with CEOs and new companies, new tokens, stuff like that. So we actually cover completely different spectrums of the crypto world.
that sounds amazing. Can you get us in there, please? That would be fantastic.
I will shoot her a message for you. Yes.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Right, well, that's going to keep me occupied until we get this interview done with her to again stop me from going stir crazy while I'm also stuck indoors here in the UK. So, on that note, I will just stop recording right now. There we go. What do you think is going to happen at this block reward halving? Because there's lots of people getting excited about this. Lots of speculation flying around. What's your personal opinion on what might go down, as it were?
I think that's another thing that I don't have a grandiose opinion on, especially with the pandemic, which is something that we've never seen in the
Yeah.
cryptocurrency market before. I think it could really go either way or nothing happens at all.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that crypto is correlated to COVID-19 and affected by sort of other things in the market? Like, do you think it's correlated to the stock market or anything like that, or do you think it's sort of an asset class on its own?
I think it exists on its own. I think there are obvious correlations. An example like the pandemic, obviously people are going to have different reactions to their money, pulling it in and out of different places. We've never seen something like this before. And again, it's a new market, so it's really hard to say. But I think that any predictions that anyone makes are speculative at this point.
Yes, yes. And I mean, have you had any? Have you any? Are there any cryptocurrency exchanges that are based in the United States, or are they all outside of the United States jurisdiction?
Don't know. I don't really trade.
Oh, where'd
Don't
you
have great advice for that.
That's all right. Where'd you get your Bitcoin from?
So I get paid in cryptocurrency again, authoritatively. Initially, I had made purchases on Coinbase and Cash App, but I mostly accrue at this point through different services. So,
gotcha. And did you find that Coinbase for dollar cost averaging is easy to use for newbies?
It can be. You can set amounts that you want to purchase on basis, like a weekly basis. You can put $20 in if you like. So it's easy if you want to put small amounts in. Just look at that fee, because they can do like a 99-cent to $2 fee depending on how much you put in. So make sure that it's an amount that's worth it.
Right, gotcha. And so is cryptocurrency your main source of income these days, or do you have a profession of something else? It's all crypto.
No, I'm full in cryptocurrency right now.
Wow. That's a very enviable position to have for many. I certainly would like that myself. Any tips for any wannabe crypto professionals out there?
Just stay involved. Stay involved in the space, and do what you're best at.
And in your case, that would be presenting and rallying people together for the cause.
Looking at social spaces. That's what I do. I look at social spaces. I look at the way that things are portrayed and perceived. I look at how that affects markets. So yes, that does have a lot to do with community building. Intrinsically, it does, but it's more about looking at the space as a whole and how we can grow. So that's where I come from. Know your skill set. That's what you have to do. Don't try to be other people.
Very good advice. Stay genuine. Yeah. So how do you think people? What's your perception of other people's perception of Bitcoin at the moment? How do you think they have a clear understanding of it, or do you think?
I think there are three different types of people. There are people who know about cryptocurrency and are involved. There are people who do not know anything about cryptocurrency. And then there are people who know about cryptocurrency but think that the learning curve is too steep for them to get involved, i.e., this is for nerds and hackers and I'll never be smart enough. And I think breaking down those two additional walls, where we let people know about cryptocurrency in the first place and we let them know that it's accessible to a common user, are the most important things when looking at the portrayal from an outside perspective.
And do you sort of try and mold their perception of it, as in, like, if they're asking questions and they're sort of not sure about things, do you try and reassure them, or do you basically say, look, this is massively risky, if you're risk averse, this is not the place for you, or do you say to them, well, it's kind of like, worth a punt?
I don't really waste my time playing devil's advocate. I have 45,000 followers. If I played devil's advocate on everybody who has something negative to say about cryptocurrency, I would never have any time to say anything positive. So I just don't get into those conversations. If you want to come up front and say that cryptocurrency is trash and not real, I don't need you. We don't need you. Just being honest, like, I'm not going to spend an hour in my day trying to convince one person who really genuinely doesn't believe in it, when there are 50 other people who might really genuinely want to get involved.
But those people who generally want to get involved, if they're sort of trying to, if they're trying to develop a perception of Bitcoin in their own minds, what do you because when we had this conversation just before, you were saying, well, it depends on your own perception of what you want to use it for, whether you want to use it for a medium of exchange, or whether you want to use it for a store of value. It is what you make of it. But if somebody was saying to you, what do you make of it? What would you say that your perception of it was? If they were going to base their own personal judgment on what you said.
I just feel like I've answered this question 4 different times. It's been prompted in 4 different ways, but it's been the same question. I dollar cost average in. I believe in long-term investments, low risk, high market cap. And then there are ways that I use it that I genuinely believe are helpful, i.e. decentralized applications, social media, monetizing your own content, avoiding tech censorship. That's a great way to use blockchain, and you can accrue cryptocurrency in doing it. Bitcoin-backed programs. Great way to get cryptocurrency without actually putting your money in. Lolly, Pay, Fold. There are so many different ways that I'm involved in cryptocurrency, and that's really what I tell them. That's how I tell them they can get involved.
That's really good. Do you have a list of those things you've just mentioned there somewhere that newbies can look at and try and sort of like emulate you, as it were?
I don't have a specific list, but I do tweet and I ask people about best ways to earn crypto, and I'll give tips and advice, and I talk about these things in my live stream.
Excellent. And they can get your live stream through your at CryptoFinally Twitter handle, can they?
Twitter and YouTube, yes.
Fantastic. Right. And on that note, I'll thank you again and stop recording.
Thank you.